Next on the Friday Football Feast, and when we think best in draft analysis, there are two names for yours truly that come to mind. First and foremost would be former Viking safety Corey Javis, who you've heard twice the last week, 9 to noon, and this guy, Jordan Reid, with a ESPN and ESPN.com, at Jordan_Reid, if you'd like to follow him via Twitter or the X machine. And JR joins us now. Jordan, I know we know you're unbelievably busy right now, my brother. You got rounds 2 and 3 tonight and Saturday, and you're all over all of it. So seriously, truly, thank you very much for making time for 9 to noon, as you always do. And let's begin here. Do you think Kirk Cousins would have signed with the Atlanta Falcons had he known that Penix Jr. pick was the plan? And good morning.
Good morning, PA. It's always a pleasure joining you guys. You know, I love making time for you, and I never have any problems for that. But the Penix pick definitely was the most surprising of any last night. I wish I was filming my reaction when it actually happened when we were on radio.
Hey.
But I still think he would have signed there just because we know Kirk, and we know when it comes to dollars and cents, he is always going to do what's best for him. And Atlanta offering him $100 million guaranteed with a $180 million contract, I just don't think any other team was willing to give him that. And so knowing now that Atlanta was going to give him that, I think he still would have went there, even with Penix now being the number 8 overall pick there.
All right, JR. Secondly, when we sat down at the Combine, the first player with whom you had a love affair, and I follow you on Twitter and I read your stuff. I have all your albums. So I know with Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton, I mean, you were on him in December, January, February. He was your favorite in February. And lo and behold, the Illinois defensive tackle was not taken in the first round. So two things here. Does that surprise you? And secondly, you know, the Minnesota Vikings don't have much currency next year after all the swapping and everything and McCarthy and Dallas Turner, but they do have a first-round pick. As ludicrous as this may seem, should they consider should they ponder their first-round pick next year in some form of deal that can get them Jerzon Newton to pair with Dallas Turner for Brian Flores defense?
No, I don't think so, especially when now you only have 3 picks for next year. And they still have a bunch of draft capital left on day 3 this year. But I think they'll be able to find a defensive tackle in some form or fashion, whether it's this year or even wait to next year. You can't plug every hole.
Got it.
You can't plug every hole every year, every offseason, I should say. So they'll have time to find that defensive tackle. I think that's definitely next on the list as far as what they need to address. I'll be really surprised if they don't take an interior defender, whether that's at 108. Or some form of fashion next year. But with Jerzon Newton, the biggest thing is just the medical. That was one of the biggest reasons why he did slip to day 2, and he had a Jones fracture. He actually played with it halfway through the season last year, and he had surgery in January. So that's why he wasn't able to do anything at the Combine. And then he had a private workout for teams on April 16th of where he did a bunch of individual drills for all the teams that were there in front of them. So the big worry is just how healthy is he going to stay after the Jones fracture. Ability is the least of questions with him. It's just the medical that happened.
Jordan Paul Charchi, nice to talk to you again. Not only 9 defensive players taken. This is by far a record. Was it just because of the talent of this draft, or do you just think that the way that the league has prioritized offense, teams are reacting to the rules that they've been given now, and teams are just they're playing to the rules the leagues have given them. They're going more offense, or is that just where the talent was?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, Paul. The biggest one is it just was an offensive-centric draft. We've been talking for months now about how deep this offensive tackle class was.
Yep.
We're talking about 6 quarterbacks in the first round. Now, I never would have predicted that they all would have went inside the top 12.
Right.
That's something I never would have predicted. So the run on quarterbacks combined with the wide receivers and then also the offensive tackles that really just pushed those defensive guys down the board. Now, I wouldn't have guessed the first one would have went at 15. That's something I didn't foresee at all. I thought we would have got one inside the top 10. I thought Atlanta or even Chicago at 8 or 9 would have took a defensive player.
So that brings us to Dallas Turner in some regards, because many people thought Dallas Turner would have been one of the players going potentially at 8. Drops to 17. What are your thoughts on the Vikings' decision to make that move to 17 and the player that they got in Dallas Turner?
Well, I love it. And I was talking to some people last night about the Vikings draft, and it's just amazing to me how much Kwesi has learned since his last draft, of how his first draft he wanted to basically consume picks or grab those picks as opposed to getting quality players at the top. And we've had the Lewis and Kyle Hamilton debate till we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
So you can tell that sometimes you just don't need to overthink it. You see a cornerstone or blue chip type of player, go ahead and be aggressive and get that player. And I think that's what he learned in getting Dallas Turner and being aggressive to get that guy. And he has heard me say this stat a million times. The Vikings have not drafted a defensive end in the first two rounds of the draft since 2005 with the Rasmus change. So it was long overdue for them to get a defensive end, a young defensive end that they could build around on this roster. And that's what Dallas Turner is. He was my number 7 ranked player in this draft class and my top defensive player overall in this draft class. So I had the same sentiment and viewpoint as Kwesi, as this is a cornerstone or blue chip type of player. I need to go up and be aggressive and get this guy. So I love the selection personally.
Hey, Jordan Nordo here, and we started out the show talking a bit about this in terms of how you value certain trades. And we were pumped that Kwesi was aggressive and got his guys, as you mentioned, and we're loving Dallas Turner. But I've seen it out there where, well, he gave up too much, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th next year. When you see these types of moves happening, how do you look into how deeply do you look into the value from like a charting standpoint?
Well, all that stuff goes out the equation if you hit on the player. Everybody talks about value and I gave up too much, but there's always going to be risk. You're associated talking about trading up, whether it's for a quarterback or offensive tackle, defensive end, or whatever. When you have a player that's highly graded like that and you start to see them fall down the board, GMs are always going to be aggressive with going up to get that player, and they don't worry about the risk. And I mean, there's always going to be risk associated with whoever you go up to select. But just having the foresight of doing that, I could see where Kwesi was coming from, just because the Vikings are going to get a couple of comp picks next year, one hopefully being in the 3rd round for either Kirk Cousins or Danielle Hunter. So you're going to have some more extra picks. You're not going to go into next season with only 3 draft picks. That's not going to happen. So what he probably was thinking was, I'm going to get some of these picks back next year so I can go ahead and trade my 3rd and my 4th next year just because I'm going to be able to recoup it.
Jordan Reid, draft analyst, ESPN, at Jordan_Reid via Twitter, the X machine. I had heard of Xavier Worthy and Ricky Pearsall into the draft, didn't put any time into them. And, you know their games inside and out. Just from afar as the first round goes, before we get your takes on McCarthy and Dallas Turner, it just seems with the way they operate things in Kansas City and San Francisco, the Super Bowl team's very high end. Worthy to the Chiefs and Pearsall specifically. I watched some YouTube stuff on him last night, and I'm not going to put a Cooper Kupp comparison on him, but it doesn't look like Pearsall's super fast. But man, does he find a way to get open. It's the teams that were in the Super Bowl. It seems like they hit on a couple of guys. What do you think?
I've always said the best teams always draft a year ahead, and we see the Eagles do this every year. Now we're starting to see more teams do it. So what happened with Kansas City is that they signed Hollywood Brown this offseason. He's only on a 1-year deal. Let's say he goes in and he has a really good year. You already have an exact replica of him in your building already. In Xavier Worthy. They're eerily similar type of players. So I think that was the foresight that they had with that. And then also the Chiefs, ever since they traded Tyreek Hill, they've struggled with explosive plays. So let's go ahead and get Hollywood Brown. And then, let's go ahead and add the fastest man ever at the combine who ran a 4.21. So now the problems of having those explosive plays, you're hoping that's gone. And then with Ricky Pearsall, he just has a knack for getting open PA. He's not overly fast. He's not an overly physical type of player. And yes, he was a out of this world tester at the combine, but that doesn't really reflect in this film. But you talk about somebody that has outstanding hands. He's just a really good route runner. And if there was a game tomorrow, he could go out there and be just fine if he had to play. So Pearsall is one of the most polished receivers in this draft class. Yes, I was a little bit surprised that he went as early as he did. He was my 46th ranked player overall, so he was inside of my top 50. I thought it was going to be an early to mid-second round pick But him going in the back end of the first round definitely was a little bit surprising to me included.
Jordan, I had a defensive coach who's been at it at a high level for a long time in the NFC, text me this morning with Dallas Turner, taken 17th by the Vikings. He never should have made it past 15. Aside from what everybody can see, explosive athlete with rare ability to bend and close to the quarterback. Blew us away with his football IQ. They obviously are well coached at Alabama, but his detailed knowledge of pass rush was far beyond anyone we talked to this year. Versatile, can rush from anywhere. Does that complement or amplify what your report was on the Alabama edge?
Yeah, it's spot on. And the thing with Dallas is that he's gotten great coaching every step of the way. So in high school at St. Thomas Aquinas, his head coach was actually Jason Taylor, that used to play for the Miami Dolphins, legendary defensive end.
Oh, wow.
That's been his coach in high school. In college, Nick Saban, how he's been able to develop defensive players. But the big adjustment that I wanted to see from Dallas this past season was, could he go from being a guy to being the guy now that Will Anderson Jr. was gone to the NFL? And he checked those boxes miraculously last year. The sack production was up. He continued to get better. Now, he still has a propensity to rely on out-athleting a lot of guys, but what you're hoping is once he continues to get more reps, he starts to experiment a little bit more with his pass rush nuance, and he adds more things to his arsenal. I think he's only going to get better, and he already has those explosive traits that you look for in the position too. That's why I think his ceiling is immense.
We're talking to Jordan Reid from ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter, Jordan_Reid. All right, so let's go to J.J. McCarthy. This fan base was rolling into the draft, Jordan, bracing to potentially have to pay up to 4 or 5 to get J.J. McCarthy. Instead, they pay quite a bit less than what would have been required and get him at 10. Do you feel like 10 was the appropriate spot for J.J. McCarthy? And what do you like about his game, and what makes you nervous about his game?
Yeah, I never bought into the top 5 stuff with JJ. I always seen him as more of a 8 to 10 type of draft pick of where he was going to go. In my final mock draft, I had the Vikings swapping with Atlanta at 8. I thought that was going to be the sweet spot of where JJ ended up going. He ended up going 10. So somewhere in that range, I thought that's where he was going to go. But what I love about the selection is that you get your quarterback to groom, that you don't have to play right away. And even though JJ is really raw as a passer, you're able to bring him along really slowly just because you already have the weapons in place. You have Sam Darnold in place too. Now, the thing you worry about with JJ is that just how much left is to uncover as far as his potential. Is there more left in the tank for him? And yes, I know JJ is very young. He literally just turned 21 years old in January, but just how much more potential does he have left? But the thing that gives you hope is, even though he was in a run-centric offense at Michigan, when he was allowed to throw the ball, he was very efficient. He completed 67% of his passes on third down, 76% off of play action. Those are things that translate to the next level, and the guy is a winner. He's won at every single stage of his life, which is something that you love to see in a quarterback.
Talking to Jordan Reid, we mentioned the Michael Penix situation, which was very odd. The other one that really surprised me was Las Vegas going tight end with Brock Bowers. Not that Brock Bowers was absolutely worthy of pick 13, but Vegas had spent a first-round pick on Michael Mayer the year before. So to me, that was a bit of a surprise. What were your thoughts on Brock Bowers ultimately landing at 13?
Yeah, I was on an island on our radio show last night on ESPN Radio, and a lot of people were praising the pick, but I didn't understand it just because every defensive player in the draft was available to you. Yeah. And you need so much help on that side of the ball. You need help along the defensive line. I know they signed Christian Wilkins, but you still need more pieces there. Their secondary is not very good right now, and you had every corner on the draft board available to you. You could have took Tyrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell. There's so many other guys that you could have selected. And yes, I know they took the best player available approach, but there's a difference between taking the best player available and the best player available that makes sense.
Yeah.
You already having Michael Mayer on the roster, investing a second-round pick in him, and now adding Brock Bowers to it. Yes, I know you want to run 12 personnel, but I just thought they could have got a better player that made more sense for where they are at this stage in their roster rebuild.
We talked about Jerzon Newton and not going in the first round, Jordan. Well, just in terms of as day 2 starts to unfold later today, What excites you about some of those defensive players outside of Newton? I look at Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry staring at me on the best available list via your website, ESPN. What excites you about maybe potentially a super active Friday because of the unprecedented stretch of offensive players creating a bleep ton of defensive value for teams unlike the Vikings that actually have draft picks today?
Yeah, I think this is something to really watch today, just as far as, where these guys come off of the board, whether it's Johnny Newton, Cooper DeJean. There's plenty of other receivers that are on the board, too. I mean, Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, the list goes on and on of this deep receiver class that's still on the board. So we have Buffalo starting off today. I would be surprised if they don't go wide receiver, especially after trading out in the first round. Kool-Aid McKinstry is another name where I'm really interested to see where he does end up going. So there's a lot of value on the board, and this is one of my favorite parts of the draft, just because now you're getting into guys that were projected to be first-round picks, but they failed. Maybe it's a medical or something off the field that happened that caused them to slip into the second round.
Hey, JR, as the division goes, with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen off play action to either Herbert, the second-year Texas kid, Johnson, or DeAndre Swift. Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze. What do you think of that 1-2?
Yeah, it's going to be scary to go up against for Minnesota. What they're building in Chicago is very promising. And we had Caleb and Rome on yesterday on ESPN Radio, and they're really excited to play together. But you can see Ryan Poles and his vision of the team really coming together. And you can make a strong argument that during the last 6 weeks of the year, their defense was the best in the NFL. So they have some premium players at every single level of their defense, whether it's Montez Sweat, TJ Edwards, who had a good year last year, and they just paid Jalen Johnson as well. So they have some building blocks on that side, and now they're transitioning over to the offensive side of the football. So now with them having a quarterback, taking Caleb with number 1 overall and taking the best player on the board in Rome, they're really starting to build something promising in Chicago.
Jordan, I know it's a very, very busy day. This is the last question for me anyway. The Packers end up taking tackle, which is not a surprise, but Jordan Morgan is a bit of a surprise. Many people did not see him necessarily as somebody that was going to go in the first round. And the Packers have a ton. They've done such a good job choosing offensive linemen. I think they get the benefit of the doubt institutionally. But what were your thoughts about the Packers' selection there?
I wasn't really surprised. Honestly, I thought Morgan was somebody that was really underrated throughout the process. And there were some question marks about him coming into the season. You know, he's coming off the torn ACL, but I thought he bounced back really nicely last year. Some people and scouts that I talked to, some people liked him more so at guard as opposed to tackle. He's played 98% of his snaps in college at tackle. So what's going to be really interesting to see is where exactly do they play him? Do they keep Zach Tom at tackle, or do they do the inverse and allow Morgan to play left tackle? So they have a lot of intriguing pieces on that offensive front. Elton Jenkins, who was one of my favorite players in the draft when he was coming out of Mississippi State, he's turned into a heck of a player for them. So they're just trying to protect their investment in Jordan Love, and they're building a really good offensive core.
Lastly here, Jordan, you referenced it earlier when I asked you the question about Jerzon Johnny Newton. If there are 3 techniques, defensive tackles who can get after the quarterback, that maybe can be attained, I don't know, second half of the third round, or with what the Vikings have now beginning at 108, are there a couple of names you can slide us and maybe tell us why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where a lot of the value is in this draft class, and just some that I have graded in that range. One name to keep an eye on is Rook Orororo, who's a defensive tackle from Clemson. He potentially could be there late third or the fourth round. Another is Makai Wingo of LSU. He's somebody that could be there in the third or the fourth round. But one name I think they're going to have a lot of interest in is Dwayne Carter of Duke. He's one that is an explosive 3 technique, and I think he would be a really good fit in a Brian Flores style of defense.
All right, now, lastly, because I got touted on these names into the draft, and I haven't asked you about them, okay, because this was late steam, and these guys have not been drafted, and I don't know where they're supposed to go, but the Vikings currently have no second or third round picks. Edge Adisa Isaac. My guy didn't tell me where he played, so I don't know where he played.
State.
Penn State, okay. Adisa Isaac, what do you think of him?
I don't think he's going to be waiting very long. I think he's going to hear his name really, really quickly. And when I was studying Chop Robinson, it didn't take him long to stand out. He's very explosive, 6'5", 250 pounds. Still needs to get better as far as his pass rush move and be a little bit more durable as a run defender. But having those traits and then that type of size and then how versatile he is, those dudes don't stay long on the board at all. So I'll be surprised if he doesn't go somewhere inside of the first 20 picks today.
What about Mohamed Kamara?
Yeah, so he's another, if the Vikings want to get another edge rusher at 108, just because he's a little undersized, I definitely think he could be somebody that could be in contention if they want to continue to build depth along the edge. But, I mean, he was outstanding last year. He had 13 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss, and he was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year.
And finally, South Dakota State University guard Mason McCormick. Like, where do you think he'll go? What do you love him? Where do you think he'll be drafted?
He should be the top candidate for them at 108. I think he's a plug-and-play starter right away. And I know they have Blake Brandel projected to be the starter there right now, but McCormick's pedigree, his physical mentality, I had an opportunity to see him at the East-West Shrine Bowl back in January, and I thought he was one of the better players there. And then you add in how much of an explosive tester he was. I think he's going to be a top contender for them, assuming that he's there at 108.
Charles Davis with NFL Network was on 9 to Noon a couple of days ago, and he compared him to Wyatt Teller, the right guard for the Cleveland Browns. Do you see any Wyatt Teller in Mason McCormick?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's very sustainable at the point of attack. He brings that nasty physical demeanor, and then he can play center or guard. So that's the good thing about him. And I know he's only played a guard during his time with the Jackrabbits, but he's one of those players that is very versatile, and he would fit in what they're trying to do.
You're A+. Thank you for making time for 9 to Noon. Bless you, my friend, and have a wonderful day and weekend, all right?
No problem. Thank you, guys, and good luck the rest of the week.
Yep. See you, man. Jordan Reid.
So good.
Hey, he's fantastic. Just quick twitch like Javis. ESPN, ESPN.com for Jordan Reid, at Jordan_Reid via Twitter. And as we soar into the second half of the radio presentation, still much, much more to talk about involving J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner landing with the Minnesota Vikings. And really, sooner or later, we will dive into the totality through Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his staff's third draft, and just how the trajectory of improvement and of things are abundantly clear as we move forward. And we'll talk about that around the corner or somewhere later in the radio show. We ain't forgetting about the Wolves either. 9:30, 9:40 tonight on KFAN. Horton on lead vocals. They're up 2-0 on the Phoenix Suns. Very, very important game tonight and Sunday, because the Denver Nuggets are set to sweep the LA Lakers, which means they're going to get some downtime. All of that in the second half of the show. But first,
The Fan, along with BigDeck.com, they want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. The keyword is win. Go to KFAN.com, enter the keyword win, and you might win $1,000.
the social distortion of it all. That would involve social media and not Vikings Twitter, but Falcons Twitter, after the Atlanta Falcons selected Michael Penix Jr., the left-handed quarterback from the Washington Huskies, after they signed our guy, Cuzbuzz, Kirk Cousins, Kirk O'Chains, to a deal that reportedly had like $100 million in guaranteed money in here. And the X machine, the tweet machine, and the social distortion of it all was quite hot last evening. One that I will share, Nordo has a bunch more, is there's somebody at 5127 Gata, who is an Atlanta Falcons fan. And I knew this name that we're about to reference, but I didn't exactly know that this individual settled into a siege of Atlanta, shelling the city and sending raids west and south of the city to cut off the supply lines from Macon, Georgia. And here's the guy's name. This guy tweeted after the pick of Michael Penix. My man writes with an old school historical reference. I wish the Falcons were in Atlanta when William T. Sherman came through.
I always love that one.
William T. Sherman shelled the city, sending raids west and south of the city to cut off the supply lines from Macon, Georgia. And 5127 Gotta tweets, I wish the Falcons were in Atlanta when William T. Sherman came through.
I always love that one.
That's quite clever, my man.
That is. I've got one for you. My friend Andy Behrens tweeted, if I was the Falcons, I would tell the commish that my internet went out and I got kicked out of the draft room and Penix just happened to be in my queue.
Come on. Brilliant.
I got auto-drafted.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Right.
I've seen a ton of those.
Oh, so have I.
Just scrolling through the Falcons tweets themselves, right? I mean, just like the Vikings, they tweet, he's here, we got him, and it's a JJ, it's like a GIF or something. He's in purple, and then all the responses, all the likes. Y'all been auto-drafting has been the best one. Also, if you guys can tell me, what's with all the Oppenheimer memes? What is that? What does that mean, Charch, as it relates to?
I have not seen that.
It was a nuclear joke.
Blow up the team, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Anyway, I one of these, let me see. Genuinely considering canceling my tickets. Why is Terry picking a 24-year-old injury-prone QB5 when we just signed Cousins and have the worst pass rush in the league? Awful, awful pick. This Falcons fan, not only did the Vikings give us Cousins, they took Dallas Turner. Are you guys paying attention?
I always love that one.
Move to Germany, take Fontenot with you.
Oh, come on.
Move to Germany. Okay.
Watching the War Room video for the Falcons with the GM explaining to the owner their pick. It literally looks like our current Congress with a bunch of old people walking around not knowing what the bleep is going on.
Oh, geez.
Funny video, guys. Funny video.
Well, the video is funny because Blank and their GM, Fontenot, embrace right after the pick, but Blank is saying something to him like right next to his ear as they're embracing. And I mean, it's kind of like, what just happened? How did this happen? Because then they back off and, it's the GM is with the hand motions and the gyrations and the histrionics. He's explaining something to the elderly owner, Arthur Blank. Mm-hmm. And Blank kept cutting him off and like asking him questions and stuff. So this has to be the owner of the Atlanta Falcons wondering, how did this happen? Or why did this happen? I have the feeling he didn't know it was coming.
Which would be really weird. I mean, normally owners are in on the big picture plan.
Right.
They're not in it at pick 207.
Yeah,
but
I'm probably
for these,
wrong.
These big picture ones, the owners usually are in on that.
Anything else?
And have approved it. Yeah.
Well, there's infinite numbers of memes and vulgarities and things, but I do have some more. I like this one, given my age.
Memes and vulgarities.
The kids won't get it. Is Ashton Kutcher going to come out? Is this real?
Yeah.
As in, you got punked.
I always love that one.
Love it.
So he's absolutely incensed.
Well, Cousins is 36, and he's off an Achilles. And medically, it is proven, because I've heard a fair amount of trainers mention it, that the probability of popping your other Achilles at this age is because of the age is higher than it would be for those younger. I ain't predicting it's going to happen. It's just we've heard it and or read it in a bunch of different spots. And if you think you're going to lose picks next year, if you think the Raiders are going to try to jump everybody and get up and get Michael Penix Jr., and you have you have him ranked higher than McCarthy and or Nix. Well, then, I mean, it's, he's 24 years of age and you don't know when he's going to play. And you're certainly not prognosticating, well, we have to have this guy because our guy's off an Achilles. All right, well, if you're really tripping over your guy being off an Achilles, then why'd you give him $100 million guaranteed? So that'd be a problem, at least if I had an opinion within that room, which I obviously don't. So if it's you say it yearly, Paul, that take a quarterback every year, and maybe
even if you don't, if until you have a franchise quarterback, you keep taking quarterbacks.
Right? Maybe that's not realistic.
Probably not first round every year.
No,
so it's the insurance part of it, even at the age, if it's a year or 2 years. In a deep quarterbacks draft that we over talked because of the perceived depth from it, And there will be a bunch more that go today and a bunch more that go on Saturday. I'm not necessarily mad at that part of the situation, but it's like you to have the new Bijan Robinson is probably the face of the franchise. So to say Kirk is the face of the franchise is probably not accurate.
Yeah, it's Bijan.
But he's the quarterback, and he's the new quarterback. Mm-hmm. And he also can be a sensitive quarterback, where if you got grandiose things in front of him, he's going to slice and dice his way through to the answer, look off safety, shake the shoulders, take big hits, and make big plays. Generally speaking, that's who Kirk has been.
You know, mentioning Bijan. Oh, sorry.
But
finish your thought.
But the details of it, with like the personality traits, or just the investment is. And I generally go the other way, where I'm like, I don't include the players in situations like this. They're not watching the film. They're not going to the pro days. They're not at the top 30s mostly.
No, of course.
So, and then if you're like, if you include Kirk in this, then I don't know, maybe Kyle Pitts or Drake London or somebody is like, well, you took this guy. I mean, could I have watched it with you? Or it just opens the metaphorical Pandora's box. With Cousins, I absolutely believe, because of his personality type and the fact that he's new, you have to give him a hint that this is coming. But that also could be because there's so many loose lips in the world these days. I mean, people keeping secrets these days is as bad as I've ever known in my life. So there was a lot of secrecy. And, I know with the Vikings and I read with some other teams that there are only like 3 or 4 people. So we have access to the entire draft board.
Yeah.
Except this part, which would be the quarterbacks, because people are worried about fools gossiping and not being able to keep secrets. Maybe that played into it, that maybe they were worried Cousins would let his agent McCartney know, and then McCartney wouldn't like it and he'd leak something. I don't know what part of subterfuge season into which this plays, but you got to let him know, man. He can't hear it on an Atlanta radio station, driving to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for a freaking autograph signing. You just can't. That can't happen.
Not at the quarterback position. That's just not how it works. Quarterbacks get deferential treatment, always have. And, just because it's going to blindside him so much, you have to give him some warning on this. Have to. It's bad management. It's, you know what? The Falcons deserve Arthur Smith back. I think they should right now. They should have to go get Arthur Smith, rehire him as their head coach.
And make his assistant head coach Jeff Fisher.
I always love that one.
And that's not my take. That's Charch's take. Nordo, you were saying?
Well, yeah, happiest man, just reading through some of these. If you think they're mad about, if you think the Falcons fans are angry now, wait until they take Spencer Rattler with their next selection.
Oh, wow. Here comes Keaton Slovis. Why? He played with Drake London 4 years ago. We know what we're doing.
Happiest man in the organization, Bijan Robinson. He'll get 500 carries because no chance in bleep that QB room stays healthy.
Oh, wow. So, right, the 4 injuries, 2 shoulders, 2 knees, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the lead dog, the alpha, off an Achilles at an extended age, at an older age. Wow, that's a great tweet.
What do you think about this? Because I heard Lieber mention it with you on the draft show last night. Now, this isn't the NBA, so the way that trades are executed and things, he would have to sign his rookie deal, I believe, before the Falcons could make a move.
Got it.
What if he's a trade option? That the Falcons, again, kind of going back into that tampering vibe. That this is a guy that we definitely like, and we want to raise him, and it is an option, and the Kirk and the unknowns with age and time, Achilles, etc. But it's also potentially in what is considered to be it's a year from now. It is considered to be a significantly weaker QB class than 2024.
Right.
That there is possibility a team that misses out on the Quinn Ewers, and at this stage, frankly, I don't know who the other top 2 or 3 QBs would be. That this is a guy that's out there and an option for a team that couldn't get up in the draft a year from now.
Two quickies. If you're doing it, then you are succumbing to public pressure, and you're worried because the Falcons have had problems selling out games in the past. I mean, it's. I know they sell out, but it's not. They're not lining up outside the stadium to get Falcons tickets. So maybe there will be organizational pressure to consider that, because of public backlash. Secondly, I have no interest in that. And it's not because the general manager, Terry Fontenot, would be an absolute bold-faced liar for what he said in his press conference about the reasons he likes Penix and the asset that they have moving forward. But thirdly, is I do believe it's fool me once, shame on me, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. With the 2020 wide receivers, the tight ends last year, and the depth of it and everything. And it was even more loud this year with quarterbacks. So you want one or two from this draft. And they got one that is widely considered to be one of the best three of a deep quarterbacks draft, with a quarterback who may only play 2 years there and is off a pretty extensive injury. So I don't mind the Penix Jr. pick from that standpoint. But the way it transpired with Cousins not knowing, and it looks like the owner didn't know, and the fan base hates it. Now we got William Sherman references rolling back through Atlanta. I mean, this thing has just gone completely pear-shaped. It's 9 to noon. Don't leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got it.
JJ McCarthy.
Dallas Turner, linebacker, Alabama. You heard it live on the audio home for Vikings football. KFAN, The Fan.
All right, boys. We have a minimal, I assume minimal host-related problem right now, and I'm being serious with what I'm sharing. I don't know who brought those wings in for the Power Trip Morning Show today.
Yeah.
Any idea?
I have no idea.
Okay, two things.
It's a friend. There's a John Creasel connection.
Oh.
I just don't know how.
Your wings are terrific.
They're
I had two
awesome.
of them. I had one of the plains, and it was succulent, and it was meaty, and it was wonderful. Well, then I dabbled in something called 5150, and I had no idea what it was. It's so by far the hottest thing I've ever put in my mouth.
You put a lot of things in your mouth.
I don't know what to do to quell it. I don't know what to do to calm it. I don't know what to do to get it to calm down, but my mouth is on fire. My tongue hurts. I have a blister in the back right of my mouth, and I don't know how it got there. Old people do things like that. And it's making that hurt. So I'm just going to sit back while you guys talk about the NFC North and the draft and stuff like that, and hopefully get my wits to me as we head into the final hour of 9 to noon, about 10 minutes from now, so we can start howling.
Well, maybe what you can do is you can do what Kirk Cousins did last night.
So I'd have William T. Sherman run through my mouth.
Well, no, I think
Sherman's going to run through your lower colon in about an hour.
Sherman Tank.
He sat at home and had a nice glass of ice cold milk. Think about his situation and what he had laying in front of him.
Well, but Emily forgot to send the clean the refrigerator or it's going to be tossed email iHeart-wide to about the last month. So the milk that's in there, I mean, Peja Stojakovic, when he used to play against the Minnesota Timberwolves and wouldn't shower for 3 days because he would stink so badly, nobody wanted to guard him. That milk smells worse than that. So I threw it away, but thank you. But boys, take it away.
Detroit trades up to go get a cornerback that many people believe was the best in this draft.
I know, right?
Alabama cornerback Terrion Arnold.
Yeah.
Now, Arnold was somebody that was, in my mind, even a possibility. I had him as a possibility for the Vikings if they had held 23, but I thought he might go a lot earlier than that.
Yeah.
I had in our Power Trip mock draft, I selected him at 15 for the Colts. This was a big move that I think is not yet on Vikings radars. This team, the Lions team, they've fixed over the course of this offseason, they fixed the glaring problem that they had, their secondary, or appear to have.
Yeah.
Massive moves. They cleared out every cornerback other than Brian Branch, who they had picked last year, and he was a hit. I mean, Brian Branch looks completely legit.
Real deal.
Real deal. And now they put first-round equity on the field opposite him in Terrion Arnold. They traded for Carlton Davis.
Yep.
This is they brought in
Bucks.
Amik Robertson. This Lions team looks so good on paper that there's right now I'm not going to say right now in late April that this is going to be a Super Bowl team, but they were like a play away from the Super Bowl last year, and they fixed the things they needed to fix. Boy, Detroit looks like a good roster right now.
I forget who they ended up getting rid of. He was in like some car chase or he disappeared somewhere. Is it Cam Sutton?
Yeah, Cam Sutton.
He was one of their corners, wanted by police. I don't even know what he did, but he disappeared. They got rid of him. They've been, frankly, they're terrific. What the Lions are doing from a roster standpoint right now. Marcus Davenport, I think that's a roll of the dice, right? The 1 and the 6.5.
Yeah,
but
DJ Reader, what a great signing he was.
That's a sweet deal right there. So no, everything they're doing right now in Detroit, which is frustrating. They're setting records in draft attendance, and you got Gotti Goffington jerseys or Goaty Goffington jerseys on NFL Network as the draft is commencing. They're partying. They are the best team in the division. The SPA would say the target at which to shoot. But I loved the Terrion Arnold pick, and I'm glad you mentioned though staying in the division. As good as the Lions have done it, I do actually, and that's fine that the Packers have drafted as many offensive linemen and they've worked out and they've had a lot of success with it. That's fine. There's a ton of defensive players that they just stiff-armed with that pick last night, while in some ways reaching, as some would say, for the particular tackle that they went with. They get it right. It's all good. Jordan Love's got somebody to keep him upright. That's cool. Get that run game going. They're excited about it, I'm sure. But whether it was, Kenny Clark's not getting any younger. Let's look at defensive talent on the interior. Grab a corner. I think somebody that would have fit really, really well in that secondary as they figure out how to get that thing going. Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry was an option. All of those things. I'm kind of shocked that they went O-line there. I don't know if you are, Charch, but I think it was a bad decision on their part.
Well, they needed to backfill Bakhtiari's spot.
Yep.
And so
their left tackle situation last year left a little to be desired.
It did. And I agree that they have defensive needs that they could have addressed here, but they needed to get the offensive line back upright. They, other than Elton Jenkins, there really wasn't, and Josh Myers I think is pretty good too as their center. They needed help at a variety of positions. Morgan gives you a little bit of position flexibility. Jordan Reid, who we just talked to, and we asked him about it, he felt like it was an appropriate spot for him to go. He knows more than we do about Jordan Morgan. So maybe it turns out that it's okay.
Hey, the computer in front of me here. You can fire that up for audio, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I never knew that.
Oh, not that. Only the next gen side.
Oh, my bad. I'll send it over to you. We'll listen to it when we come back. I haven't listened to it, but it drew me in with somebody named Trevor Sakima at Tampa Bay Trey. He might be a pro football focused draft analyst, but it's NFL Network, and it's Jason McCourty. And these guys discussing J.J. McCarthy. And when we come back, we'll hear what it sounds like. It's like 50 seconds long.
I found it, yeah.
The Vikings, go ahead and play it now.
All right.
Vikings getting McCarthy at 10 was the final puzzle piece for the picture they were painting this offseason. To me, their last few months were an ideal balance of aggressiveness and patience when they needed some of both. Let's hear it.
How do you see it playing out between J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold there in Minnesota?
I love this for so many reasons. I feel like it's best case scenario other than maybe just staying at 11 and getting McCarthy, but they only have to trade up to 10 to do it. So they don't have to give up a king's ransom to go to 4 or 5 like some of the mock drafts said. Instead, they get McCarthy at a great spot, and I think that he's going to a great spot. I love the idea of him, of course, with Kevin O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson, with an offensive line that's really, really getting there as one of the better ones in the NFL. But it's that opportunity to sit behind Sam Darnold. I don't think they brought Sam Darnold in and told him, like, hey, you're the guy. We're 100% going to stick with you this year. I think they did it to say, look, we're probably going to draft a quarterback. We're going to give you the best opportunity to start right away while that guy can groom and sit and wait. I think it's a perfect scenario here in Minnesota with McCarthy.
So with general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, from the time he took the job through the 2022 draft and now through what transpired last night after free agency, that bears conversation and it bears discussing the trajectory on which not only he and his staff seem to be, but the organization. And finally, Nordo referenced this earlier, and I've seen more on this Michael Penix Jr. thing in the Falcons. Diana Rossini of The Athletic, a senior NFL writer, she was on 9 to Noon a couple of days ago. Her tweet, it plays off your joke earlier, Charch, about the Falcons leaving phone or computer on auto draft.
Yes.
Like out of the room, going to the bathroom or getting a sandwich, and then things go quicker than they think, and they end up with Penix Jr. But Diana tweets, Michael Penix Jr. did not take a top 30 visit to Flowery Branch. The Falcons only attended a 45-minute workout and met with him at the Combine. It's almost unheard of for a quarterback taken in the first to not be at a team's top 30.
Very rare.
Crazy.
I always love that one.
And boom!
Draft coverage this week on The Fan is presented by Pep's Draft House Pizza.